On December 6, 2007, at 10 p.m., the Johnstown police were dispatched to 520 Charlotte Street in Colorado on a report of a 7-year-old female not breathing. Milliken police officer Brandon Outstad arrived on the scene first, at which time he observed the fire department and medical performing CPR on the victim, Zoe Garcia. Zoe was later pronounced dead at the Northern Colorado Medical Center. Through this investigation, it was learned by police that both Heather Trujillo and Lamar Roberts were left at the residence to care for Zoe while her mother was at work. An autopsy would later reveal that this death was ruled a homicide. Heather, who was Zoe's sister, told officers she was wrestling with Zoe when Zoe passed out and lost consciousness. Heather stated she was on the top of the victim, holding her arms down with her legs while trapping her on her chest like a typewriter. When Zoe passed out, then regained consciousness. Heather stated her boyfriend, Lamar Roberts, was also present during this time, acting as the referee, but not involved in the wrestling, and that her twin sisters were asleep in another room. Heather stated that after Zoe woke up from passing out, she told her it was time to go to bed, which she did, and that Zoe was having trouble breathing. Heather stated that she checked on her after approximately 15 minutes and she was not breathing, so she yelled for Lamar. Heather stated that they took her into the living room and checked for a pulse and attempted to wake her up. Heather then stated she took the victim to the shower and turned on the water, at which time the victim responded to the water, then lost consciousness again. Heather stated they took the victim to the living room where they did CPR. Heather then called her mom, Dana Trujillo. Heather stated Lamar knew CPR and that she did not. She called 911 and then her mom arrived shortly after. Lamar himself told police he was downstairs in the room playing video games, and Heather and Zoe were upstairs wrestling when Heather yelled to him that the victim was not breathing. Lamar stated Heather was in Zoe's bedroom and she was struggling to breathe, so they then took her into the living room to find a pulse. He stated that he did not know how to perform CPR, so he felt Zoe's heart to see if she was breathing. He said that he and Heather both put Zoe in the shower, at which time she seemed to respond to water. You see how Heather said Lamar did know CPR and then he confirms he did not? Strange, eh? Lamar stated they both then took her back to the living room to attempt CPR. Heather and Lamar were then requested to go to the police department for an interview. The county sheriff's investigator Josh Noonan conducted an interview. In this interview, Lamar said he was downstairs playing video games and he heard a whole bunch of noise upstairs. He stated Heather shouted for him to come upstairs because Zoe was not breathing right. Zoe was in her bed wheezing, so they carried her to the bathroom, undressed her and placed her in the tub and ran water on her. Zoe was nodding her head side to side, her eyes were squinting and she said something. Lamar thought she was teasing, but then her breathing slowed further, which sounded raspy when she exhaled and wheezy when she inhaled. Lamar and Heather both carried her to the living room, checking for a pulse, and then Lamar began mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, stating Zoe made a gurgling sound when exhaling. And the question remains, okay, well, what actually happened? How did she die? Well, don't worry, those details are about to come, and they're actually insane. Lamar states while giving CPR, Heather told him that she had put Zoe to bed and started to watch a movie. Heather stated at this time she heard a noise from Zoe's room, so then she called Lamar upstairs. Lamar said he continued blowing into Zoe's mouth until Dana, the mother, and 911 arrived. Lamar said at this time blood was coming out of Zoe's nose and mouth. During Heather's interview, she went on to say that after they all ate for dinner, she and Zoe had been wrestling, playing Mortal Kombat. Heather added that during the time that they were wrestling, she had tripped Zoe in the stomach, karate chopped her lower arms, jabbed and pinched the victim's thighs, kicked her in the shins, hooked her stomach and buttocks, and poked Zoe's chest. "What the fuck are you doing?" Heather stated that at one point she picked up Zoe in an attempt to shake her, but dropped her on her right arm, at which time Zoe complained that her arm was hurting. Heather said Zoe did this back to her and that they were playing in a fun manner. Now, while straddling Zoe's pelvic region, she started poking her chest until Zoe closed her eyes and it seemed as if something was wrong. Heather stopped and told Zoe to go to bed, at which time Zoe stood up and fell back down, so Heather helped her to get back up and take her to bed. Heather stated Zoe closed her eyes and passed out as if she had fallen asleep. Approximately 5 to 15 minutes later, Heather heard Zoe making a similar sound to snoring, but it was a gurgling sound and Zoe was not responsive. Well, that's what happens when you play Mortal Kombat in real life with a child, you muppet. Now, all of this I know is very bizarre, so here's exactly what happened. You see, both Lamar and Heather were upstairs slugging Zoe, but did not know how hard was the pain inflicted on her. They didn't know this because they were drinking and they had become a little bit numb. You see, Lamar told police eventually that he was doing martial arts on Zoe and that he had done a back kick on her. Then he struck her again, and this time she fell on the floor and did not get up. Both Heather and Lamar were abusing the victim in the face to wake her up. They cracked an egg in her mouth, stating that the egg went down her throat in an attempt to see if she was messing around with them. Lamar then pinched her in the stomach. Lamar told police that Zoe stopped breathing for approximately 15 minutes before calling an ambulance, because the cops were going to get mad because they were teenagers watching little kids. So to sum up how they treated Zoe, the teens knocked, karate chop and body slam while imitating the video game Mortal Kombat. The coroner said Zoe died of blunt force injuries. An autopsy showed that she had a broken wrist and more than 20 bruises. She had swelling in the brain and bleeding in her neck muscles and under her spine. Heather was sentenced to 18 years in 2008. Lamar was sentenced to 36 years. Can you think of anything more stupid? They are acting out a video game on a child. Just play the video game, you muppets. But I do think because they were drinking, right, and they were high, off the alcohol that is, they were a little bit numb, they had no idea what they were doing. And I guess they paid the price. Thank you for watching.
Lamar Roberts and 16-year-old Heather Trujillo have been charged with felony child abuse causing death. According to a police affidavit, the teens were babysitting Trujillo's half-sister, Zoe Garcia, on December 6th while the girl's mother was at work. He asked him to stop hitting her, but he said he couldn't because he was drunk. If convicted, the teens could be sentenced to 48 years in prison. Mike Garcia, The Associated Press.
By the way, if you can, please follow me on Instagram. My previous Instagram was removed, so this is my new one. Link is in the description.